Thank you all for coming. I am as excited as you are about getting into this conversation. So my name's Edmund Malesky. I'm a professor of political economy, and I'm the director of the Duke Center for International Development here at the Stanford School for Public Policy. It's my delight to introduce today's distinguished guest and engage conversation with him. I have so many things to ask him. I'm sure you do as well. Before we begin, I want to give a huge shout out to the Asian Pacific Studies Institute, especially Alex and Bernard out there. They make everything happen here of all the great events in Asian programming. I also want to thank Charlie Colasordo, my student in I don't know how many classes, but he's a repeat he's a frequent flyer in the Leslie classes, and he's been a source of inspiration for me in this energy and enthusiasm for Southeast Asia for a long time. And I want to thank him for making the initial connection and also being a part-time Uber driver. So this is one of our highest profile events of the year, and we're really excited that there's a full house of attendees. So many of you know Pita Limjaroenrat as the former leader of the Move Forward Party. He financed May 2023 elections, where his social democratic platform won the most votes and seats in parliament. In a political system long shaped by military intervention and constitutional constraint, that electoral outcome was historic. It reflected not only generational change, but also a growing demand for structural reform, from economic demonopolization and decentralization to welfare expansion and civilian control of the military. Yet, despite winning the popular mandate, his efforts to form a government were blocked by an institutional mechanism embedded in the 2017 Constitution. On August 7th, a constitutional court dissolved the Move Forward Party, and he was barred from running for office, elected office for 10 years. Pita's policy focus centers on grassroots economic opportunity, welfare improvements, and human rights, alongside a broader vision of transparent, competitive, and accountable governance. In fall 2024, he served as senior research fellow at the Rajawali Foundation Institute for Asia at the Harvard Kennedy School. He holds a joint MPA/MBA from Harvard Kennedy School and MIT Sloan, and has been named to the Timed 100 Next list. Today, despite all that's going on, he continues to champion democratic reform and equitable governance, including campaigning in support of the People's Party at Smithvere, Nakathong, Rongpaimaru. Please join me in walking. I'm a little bit starstruck myself. It's very rare to be able to have a conversation with someone who I literally have on the cover of a Caltry presentation. And I was telling Pita today at lunch that when the 2023 election was going on, and we were watching his speeches in class, he was inspirational, not just for the Thai students in the class, and not just for students interested in Thailand, but he created a motivational incentive for students from Hong Kong, from Myanmar, that saw in him like someone speaking for their generation, both in terms of the economic strategies and also in terms of the opening up these systems. And so it's really a delight. All right, so I have a plan today. So I want to talk about. Well, actually, I want to talk about your background and your pathway to politics, and then I want to sort of start with your entry into politics. Right. Spend some time on the 2023 election, and then move into what you're doing today, your aspirations. So I was like, "But sounds like a plan." All right. So let's go all the way back. So you inherited and turned around your family's rice bran oil business. Yeah. Which currently you can still buy Trader Joe's today. Wait, you took it over? Could you still be the Trader Joe's? Was that one of your?
So it was right after my father passed away, and then I saw the opportunity in having a very healthy cooking oil that's been for rice bran, so we could decommoditize, what was abundant in Thailand. And it became quite a healthy option for the American consumers, the Japanese consumers, especially if you try to get it to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or the Chipotle, you would say that non-GMO cooking oil that is not soybean or canola and has a high temperature cooking up quality. If it's not avocado oil, then it has to be rice bran oil because olive oil is only for salad. You can't really use it for French fries and things like that in America. So
All right. So this demonstrated the point I wanted to prove, which is that this is a very good businessman. Right? And have future ahead in global business, right? So why turn away from that and headed towards into politics, right? Like,
so that happens before your first question. I started my career coming of a finance degree undergrad and the sponsor was Summit Group. I understand there's a large headquarter there in North Carolina in Vail as well. And during that time, I started working for the state-owned enterprise at Thailand, the energy sector and the retail sector, Nestle, food and beverage and things like that. And because of that, I was exposed to the public sector. And then I found the challenge that working for a private sector where national energy security is one thing, maximizing objective as well as the second. We're talking about PDT as a client, so I felt like that it was more intellectually challenging just working in the present center. So it's always a goal. I wouldn't enter public sector. It then tsunami came. Tsunami hit Southeast Asia and Asia and Thailand. And then I was asked to do a proposal about the tourist authority of Thailand. And that's when I met former politicians like Kutaksit, Kun Kopkit and the CBT at the time. So I switched jobs, kind of code zeros from my paycheck or boss to work at the government house for the Thaksin administration in 2004, 2005, 2006. And that's when I came to Kennedy School.
okay.
So it was always part of the finance ladder here. Having a bachelor degree in finance or maximizing shareholders' wealth, that's hard, that's fine here. But to be able to be in a public sector where it could be about tourism revenue distribution as well as making sure that the environment is sustainable, whether it's working for a state-owned enterprise where natural energy security is so important as well as the share price. So it's a dual challenge that the public sector offers and the private sector never offered. So, working in the investment banking or private equity or management consultant was in the past. After I have realized that the public sector is so strong for the development of a country.
So, but thinking back on your business experience, right? Well, what would you say that you took most from your business experience into the public sector when you became it? Was it like organization building, strategy, discipline, financial management, team building? Like as you were trying to build the political party, do this, like where did you?
Setting it up and making it happen. Just two things. Setting it up is to have the mission, that vision, that strategy, and the execution of making it happen, organization structure, process, people's of management. That's pretty much like the elevator stage of how you manage an organization. But managing a private company is much easier because you can have a KPI, you could manage people much easier, you could have expectation management, you could hire more talents. But if it's political party, that's a different ball game in the sense that all ADs are equal and they have their rights. They're linked not to you as a party, they're linked to the people who voted for them. Of course, we happen as a party in this bit and all that. But they also sometimes have to vote to their conscience of the people who voted for them in different parts of the country with different culture, with different different transactions. Pretty much that's how political parties are designed. So to think about the strategy, to think about succession planning, to think about market structure, to think about processes, how they work together, think about people management. It's very, very hard. It keeps me awake at night all the time compared to helping a company or managing your company because that's really up to you and you could be top down pretty much in order to have the vision of organization. But a political party, it's just a lot of volunteering. There's not a lot of monetary terms or monetary incentives to make sure people are aligned. So it's a lot of breathe right out of era, a lot of inspiration, a lot of talking, a lot of dialogue. Right? You can't just break fire effect. You can't fire.
Yes, but there's a there's a policy side that I've always been intrigued with in your business background, because you talk frequently about breaking monopolies, about restoring fair competition, about, right, like dealing with inequality in the system. And I sometimes wonder, like, did those policies, did they begin with your business experience about trying to do business in an environment like,
Well, it started off by understanding the similarities and the differences between public sector and private sector. The goal of private sector is to make a lot of profit, make a lot of money, but the goal of public service is service. So if you cannot make that kind of distinction, you get a lot of private service with business background of trying to make a lot of revenue to the country, but God doesn't really care about serving the people. But if you have that kind of thinking or that kind of common ground, that kind of consensus between public management and private management, and understand the differences, that of course you have to drive GDP up, but at the same time, prosperity comes from fairness. And then the goal of public service is to serve the people, not just to bring a lot of high GDP, just like how Thailand has been doing in the past 40 years, but inequality is super high. So what difference does it make? It doesn't do any good. It's a zero-sum game. So once you have that kind of distinguish the kind of differences, understanding the differences between the private sector and the public sector, then you understand where you want to deliver results. And when you want to think about efficiency, that's where the private sector thinking comes along. The MIT slows the education down. So yeah, that means, but the secondary school education, about a sort of center. That's crazy to that. But yeah, that also brings about that. Yes, you want to bring in as much GDP as possible, but that doesn't mean that if you have a very high GDP, like Royal Province, one of the highest GDP, but the public health is really, really bad. And the public education in that province is really, really, really bad. Phuket as a tourism destination, if you have been, I mean, it brings a lot of tourism dollars into the country. But the waste management, how you take care of garbage, how you take care of fresh water in the region or the locals would be something that you really have to split your brain and really think about this, because if you bring a lot of tourism dollars into it, the rent becomes very high for the local. Their responsibility to clean after all these tourists, I mean, is also something that you have to think about. The access to clean water, if you're already in a 5-star, 4 season, whatever, that's available to you, but to locals, a Phuket area where they cannot wash their own clothes with proper pure water, it becomes something that you really had to find that kind of consensus, that kind of balance. And how do you turn this kind of inequality into businesses, into a pain point, pain point that you turn into an asset for the country? How do you manage flash flood and chronic drought in the country so that it becomes a seafarers hospital? That one should do it, and then you can take it apart and help developing other countries as well. It becomes industry.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and then talk about, so this has the motivation that you're working with, and then we head in to your decision to join Future Forward, and I'm really interested in that decision, because when we talk about Thai politics at that time, I remember we would talk about yellow shirts and red shirts and a high level of polarization and these very established powerful parties, right? The Democratic Party versus the what the Thai Party, which would become the Thai Party. And so there's these established vehicles already, and I think most people have said there wasn't a space for a party like Future Forward. Like, it's a big risk, right? I mean, there were questions about, in this red yellow world, how many Thais were orange, but I don't know, like, I wouldn't have thought that there was a huge opportunity there, but yet you're off one. So what was it that you saw?
Well, first of all, the reason why I ran for public office was that Thailand can enact it, in a sentence. I felt like, traveling abroad, growing up in New Zealand, Texas, Boston, trying to lure Japanese investors into Thailand. I felt like Thailand has that potential. And then working for former politicians as a 25-year-old guy, like sitting in the back row, making notes, drafting speeches for the ministers, I felt like if they can, I can too. And I just want to prove myself that I can do a better job than what they can do, than my former bosses and ended up in the same election cycle in 2023 where I beat them by 40%. Like, it crushed. So that's the reason why I ran for public office. The second part of his question was why I chose Future Forward as a vehicle in doing so. I felt like what Karakai Party did for Thailand was a boom in the past, but it could not carry Thailand forward. I mean, for example, if we talk about decentralization, I felt like the country needed a big bang. And if you were during COVID time, you see a response, the level of, the scale and the speed of response when there is a crisis that you have to know. And you see governments outside of Bangkok that couldn't do anything. And when Bangkok was shut down, 40% of Thai GDP was completely gone. So I felt like decentralization was something that is a way to go. And maybe Harakai came out with CEO governors. Still appointed, but making sure that they are adjusted to more private sector environment kind of thing. But I felt like that's not enough. So that's why I felt like orange is the right color for red and yellow. And it's not just a yellow as a symbol, but I kind of understand that if you are former Russians, you don't like double standard. You don't like the trick cook. You like fairness. That's what the Russians were opting for. And not on the opposite side, the yellow shirt, they despise corruption. They want to see bureaucratic reform. They want to see decentralization. And you're hearing it correctly, beyond the noises. And I felt like that could be a platform where I can, serve both sides of the colors. No goose. It's like Democrats versus this side, the cares, military parties, and things like that. And that's like the political spine that we had in 2023 in order to capture the Russians into the large wagon. But at the same time, we were talking about corruption, how we explicitly say that the equation of corruption is discretion plus monopoly minus accountability. So if we, reduce the monopoly, reduce the discretion, and increase accountability, any society corruption will be better no matter what. So because of that, I had that kind of platform that is synchronized and it served all of red shirts and yellow shirts, and that's how we won 40%. Because arguably, and you rate it, that's a famous political science algorithm from Kirkland. So it's so great that a political science thing that I sometimes teach in my political economy class made it into a talking about 10 months. See, very happy. Okay. So that becomes like a consensus between the red shirt and yellow shirt because I know what keeps it awake. And I mean, I listen to them carefully. I listen to them actively. And I know what makes their heart sing. I know what keeps them awake at night for the past 20 years. So I felt like arguably, if you are progressive in any political spectrum, you should win by about 50%. That side is bell curve. I don't know if we have any business school student or economic students here, but if you talk about normal distribution curve, you have the confidence interval of about maybe 10% here and 10% to the right, and then you have the majority, which is if you are a true progressive, you probably get about 15% of the left. If you're a very conservative, you probably get 15% on the hard run, right? But in order for you to have that kind of platform and move the society sentiment towards what I'm proposing and get 40%, so that's like my part is achievement in the sense that okay, I understand the conservatives and what they're trying to change about the country. I also understand the Democrats and what they wanted. The liberals, all right, want to see the tiger. He put some votes from the red shirts, put some votes from the yellow shirts. Otherwise, you cannot get 40% for sure, right? If you're just for specific niche. Yeah. And then it seemed to me too that Future Forward did really well in urban centers. I mean, they did really well with the constituency that I think both groups had taken for granted. You see on Peter, right? Like the new generation. I don't know if I agree with that for this, but the thing is, we won a lot of districts that are super aging society, like Lampang and Labrol. Afterwards, 1 out of 3 is retired. They're both besties. And we won landslide. And then we go to Phuket. for the deep south in the southern part of Thailand, where the average age of the voter is younger than me. We also want that flag. So it's not just tailoring to a group of millennials or Gen Z or anything.
No, I don't mean that at all. I mean, like you did. I mean, the vast majority of you use. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so it's 6 million votes, right? It's right, and the third largest return in that 2019 election, right? It's yeah. But it sounds like you weren't surprised. Like it wouldn't spread to other people, but
No, I was just surprised when I am concerned now though.
wait, what? Why is that?
Because you cannot take it for granted. You cannot take first time voters for granted. Just like here in Anarpa.
Yeah,
That is being done just because they're voting for the first time and they'll vote for whichever party is the most progressive because they have a lot of future ahead of them. Just because they have a lot of future ahead of them doesn't mean that they'll vote for us automatically. And I think I witnessed that when I was sharing of ever in Guadalajara and understandable. You cannot it's very hard, especially in various parts of the world. I see that in India, I see that in various parts where a lot of progressives, a lot of Democrats take a random first hand orders of the air version will always vote
because there's a way they might turn away.
that's a different thing, yeah. So you gotta empathize with the younger generation before you mobilize them. And the digits nowadays, they mobilize the youth, but they don't empathize with the youth.
Yeah,
So that's really something that it needs to be addressed. And I think that is something that is prevalent in the February 8th election that just passed. Ladia Mando. So,
right. So we'll get to that, but you want to talk about that first disappointment, which is looks like Teacher Forward with joining a governing coalition or leading company.
I'll move forward.
It's the and this is Teacher Forward is in 2019, right before it gets banned. Yeah, but then it gets banned, right? The constitutional court is all right, right? And so that's a huge right. And the leader of it was put on trial, and there I guess what I wanted to ask there about that experience was what did you take from that experience? Like you have this very popular party that had done it and then had this disappointing engagement with the constitutional court. And what did you learn from that about electoral politics?
Democracy is not a straight line.
Yeah,
I mean, with the benefit of the doubt, because this is Party 3.0, at risk of being disbanded once again. If you asked me that question when I was a leader, it would be a different answer. But now the timeline is about 6 7 years now.
yeah,
So democracy is not a straight line in the sense that you could be winning, you could be doing really well. The secret sauce that you had in the previous election might be totally obsolete in the new election right away.
that's so interesting. So you talk about like when you talk about you say future forward, that's 1.0 there. Yeah, move forward is 2.0. Pita's party is 3.0. And but so and like when it so I'm interested like what was the new operating system that made move forward 2.0? Like what did you intend to do and then you rebuilt in the ashes of future forward because it dissolved, right? So you have to sort of build it up again.
Yes,
From the ground up. Like what was the new operating
microphone.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, you think reprise it.
Yeah, so that's a data survivor. That happened. So Future Forward was formed for about 8 months, and they banned the party. 8 months into operation, we had to rebuild a lot of organization structure, especially campaign financing, the building of local apparatus was the second one, and the third one was succession planning because I know that they're coming after us, and you can never take it for granted. So we always have that next generation. Next 10 meaning like you're not in the executive committee at the moment. You're not in the executive leadership of any party, but you always have the next 10 that's prepared to assume leadership all the time. And that's People's Party at the moment.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this since day one.
Yeah.
And the leadership is, leadership within the party during my time was servant leadership. Leaders that create more leaders, not leaders that create more followers. So during that time, these are the 3-4 things that we have to reduce. But then again, the environment or the ecology of 2023 election is different from this year.
Yeah.
At that time, we were coming from a last decade of this guy's dictators.
Yeah.
So it was a political sign. Milo Mimila was one thing. That's why the entire nation. regardless whether it's urban, rural, old, or young, whether it's blue collar or white collar, as long as you have that political spine to stand up against this guy's dictator, it was enough like a wave, like an umbrella to take from Chiang Rai to Pattani to Suvarnakon, and people understood that, coming out of COVID crisis, that, you need a proper government that responded to the people's needs. However, this year's election, like many elections all around the world, this is not the Thailand case. It's becoming very fragmented and very segmented in terms of what drives votes. In Thailand, it was about it could be about conflicts between Thailand and Cambodia. So if 20 districts out of 500 was within that 4 provinces with the border of Cambodia. It could be about climate crisis if you're from down south next to Malaysia. How you manage flood issues and how you manage chronic debt drought in various states. If you are urban middle class, you probably care about corruption and scam operation in the country. Yeah. If you are from rural areas, you're probably worried about cash. So you see how 1P in 2023 becomes 4Cs in 2026. And I argue that applies to a lot of elections that happened last year and this year also.
I see.
It will be very fragmented in terms of, success factor that drives votes for you. It's like many, many small details that means different things to different people.
So in 2023, then it was a little bit easier because you were making a consistent appeal.
Exactly. Groups. Exactly. And no matter how far, as long as you have that political spine saying that, this is for Democrats, for democracy, for the people, by the people, with the people, it's okay. And for this one, you gotta have really, credibility and, robust policies that address corruption, climate, conflicts, and cash. Because Thailand is the second largest in ASEAN, that's growing the least, 1.6%. Very, very, very bad economy back home. So, you got to really be jacked of all trade when it comes to this election. So it's very powerful as well.
So let's go back. I want to go back to 2023 because it's I think it's so important for understanding Thailand today, right? So Move Forward is clearly the dominant party heading in, and you decide, and you put there is in a strong position. You put yourself forward as a prime ministerial candidate, but you are dealing with the entrenched politics that we just talked about, and so I guess when you did that, when you put yourself forward as that, were you intent? I mean, this is a silly question to ask, I guess, and I really should say, was the goal to win, or was the goal to be very strong, have a strong showing, and shape the national agenda on the issues that you cared about?
The goal was to maximize our potential. I felt like there was a lot that we could, against all odds, that we could really deliver results, get the power, and make change happen. So it started off in a system where we designed rules. We're definitely design rules. There was one constitutional amendment, and they amended so that the district votes from 350 becomes 400 because they feel like we're not hyper local and to compare with the established parties. And the party list, we got reduced from 150 down to 100. And it felt like the level playing field of gerrymandering, of the incumbent advantage, of the entrenched network, patronage system in high rural areas. And they felt like they could stop us. But here, it was a lot of campaign management. It was a lot of mix of political design and machine. We did on air, on ground, on site, on it as one of the frameworks, or on in terms of political communication. So we have on internet, obviously, we have on air communication, we had on ground, we had on site. So like factories, hospitals, schools, all these are in terms of your mobilization. In terms of my book mobilization, we had a strong grassroots volunteers in each of the districts. So because of a robust strategy, of a robust political spine, and then we execute it with what I call precision politics, maybe. So micro-targeting. Yeah, because of that, then I knew how to prioritize. So I didn't spread all my resources throughout the country. I looked at various factors such as candidates, competitors, and constituencies. That's the second framework. 3 Cs. Yeah. 4 Cs. Count. The previous count, if we see a lot of voters coming up, then I would use this kind of framework to prioritize on where I go.
Right.
So 160 was the part. 160 is green and yellow color. The red districts are not sure, meaning like they're not going to vote for me, So I skipped maybe like 200 districts and delegated to other people to go.
Right. So just state your energy in the faces.
Yeah, and then I use my energy in that prioritized group of districts of about 160, and we got 151. So it was like laser focus, a laser precision of knowing that we had a strong candidate, weak competitor, young constituents, and the previous count has been rising. So we've been making improvement.
So the finer point here is like all the electoral rules were biased against you.
Yes.
All of the changes in the electoral system were negative bias towards incumbent parties.
Yes.
But then you still completely outperform Future Forward's previous with
Campaign management.
That was campaign management and organizational
communication and strategizing.
Yeah. So now I want to talk about two kind of choices here that happen. So it's clear now you don't have the votes individually and move forward to prime minister, but you can build a coalition.
Yeah,
that we have enough votes.
Yes.
So that's choice, and that involves making a deal with the Shinawatra, right? Yeah, and forming a coalition with Putai. Mm-hmm. And I just want to reflect on that choice, right? Yeah. You had said that in some ways you were trying to build on what Thai Raptai had done, right, in the earlier elections, and so I just want to think about that, talk about that coalition building and what your expectations were when you entered into that partnership. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to give audiences context, so we got 151 out of 500, and for the lower house, we wanted obviously to be more than 250. So we formed a coalition with 7 other parties to form a comfortable majority of 312 out of 500. And Thai Thaksin's former party, current party, came second at about, I think I want to say, they were 40% behind us, and then 100. So they were in the hundreds, something like that. And I was not concerned at all, because during the opposition, where we were in the opposition side together, we had a lot of same ideas. Maybe we were a bit more radical or a bit more structural than them, but they were going on the same thing.
Right.
During the opposition, and we felt like, ideologically, this is the closest gap that we have with the eight coalition parties.
Yeah.
But then again, you have this soft power from the constitution that you have independent organizations. And that independent organizations, namely, is Constitutional Court, Anti-Corruption Commission, and Election Commission. Those are the 3 mechanisms that are supposed to be independent.
But we're all appointed by
appointed by the military. So the generals appointed the judges, for example, in the Constitutional Court, either directly or indirectly. So that's a kind of soft power without even exercising its power in the very beginning, that people start to self-censor themselves and start being afraid of, forming a coalition. And appointed senators obviously were there to block, except in Thailand you have
but before that I wanted to get to it. So in this self-censor, so there you also make a very important decision, which is you decide to talk pretty openly about the Limjaroenrat laws, right? Article 112, right? And that was an important plank in your platform. And if I wanted to understand that decision too, and how it affected the relationship with the coach.
Well, it's 1 out of 300 policies. Of
course, yeah.
We were not the first one to offer that we discussed with majority within the parliament, rather than leaving it to the streets and this type. Abhisit Bhuttajiwa was the first one who offered to have some says on how you find that proportionality of law, a proportionality of law between freedom of speech and the protection of the head of the state. And we felt like this is the best way to protect the institution. This is the best way to protect the monarchy from politics. Because during my time, when I was in the budget committee, I saw a lot of projects that were added the word royal and birth. And nobody wanted to scrutinize those kind of things. And the corruption was coming all over, not just within Thailand, but a lot of people coming from China coming to exploit these institutions.
So they were he was your actions. Yeah.
And nobody wanted to have a check and balance on it.
Yeah.
So I felt like, there's some benefits in having that proportionality of law. Obviously, you should have protect the king. Obviously, you should have to protect the institute, the head, the state. Yeah. But then again, you should leave a room for accountability for those people who wanted to exploit royalty. The loyalty to royalty. Yeah, and that happened a lot. And there was a couple of Chinese scammers who, these are projects with a lot of corruption and just put the word royal in front of it. Nobody wanted to take a look. And I would argue that it doesn't help any institutions, and that hinders our beloved king.
So in a sense, what you're saying is like they be clear about what this role means. Mm-hmm. He can actually be more protective with these support Thai institutions.
I think the parliamentary system inside the parliament, no one can monopolize anything. You got to vote. Yeah, and you have to do with a code of conduct, and it's very transparent because it's televised. So if we allow these kind of things with majority, I argue that it will be beneficial for all the institutions in Thailand here. But because that didn't happen, and we don't know what's going to happen going forward.
All right. So now, this is part that's like really interesting to me as a political scientist. Maybe not as interesting to everybody else, but I'm fascinated by it. So you clearly now, with the coalition with QTI and have a few other parties, right, you clearly have the votes necessary for a coalition.
Right.
But the Thai constitution in 2017
right,
was specifically changed
right,
in a way that was going to make this difficult. So the rule was you would need to have half of the seats.
Simple majority
of the combined Senate and House.
Upper and lower house. Which is 750.
750.
So you need 375 plus 1, so it's 376.
But the Senate is fully appointed.
Yes.
Right? So that in a sense, so you're going to have to win over people who, to some extent, enjoy their position because of an appointment from the incumbent.
Yes. So that's the struggle between politics of appointed and elected. Elected, you have to report to the people who elected you. Yeah. If you are appointed, you have to report to people who appointed you.
Right.
So that becomes quite an iffy business.
Right. Yeah.
So for the 12 that who voted for me, for example.
Right. So if you so it looks like you should have the votes, but then starts the backdoor maneuvering. Yeah. That's right. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Yeah.
So in a sentence, death fight quorum. Death fight quorum because there's 250 appointed senators, only 200 showed up during the vote. 50 to 60 didn't come. They just didn't come to class. And it's for now politics considered a stake.
Yeah.
Just because you didn't show up. Even if they promised me that they'll vote for me or they promise on national television, then they'll vote to the majority mandate. But just because they didn't show up because they happen to be in Japan or they happen to be in Germany or they happen to be in hospitals, these are the real excuses. And then as they phoned me later, they said, I have to apologize. I promised to vote for you to be friends with my daughter for a very long time. Give it friends with my son for a very long time. We work at a ride Kelly company with my son. I'm going to vote for you, but I just have to be in Japan that week. I just have to go to a medical treatment in Germany. I have to be hospitalized and submit away master yet.
But they said the one job was just to approve the Prime Minister.
So that by quorum, I would argue that if they showed up to the day, 250, and the kind of pressure that is being cooked outside of the parliament, I would get higher. But they just took a convenient puppy and rock on not showing up at all, and ended up with Shibuya instead of you all bit after taking your tax money for the straight 5 years. Yeah. And you have one job to show up and they didn't show up. So that like quorum is here. The devils is in the detail. Like you're going to have to show up or face the people or anything. You just don't show up.
So you get the first shot at it, and then you don't get the votes.
Yeah.
And then the coalition breaks apart, right?
Not yet. So they suspended me first.
They suspended you first.
It suspended me because of the inheritance I got from my father. So it was an undue suspension. I could say that now because I won the case. So it was an undue suspension for 6 months. That happened during the second prime minister's election at noon. Yeah. So it happened at noon, and we were just like the prime minister at 1 p.m. Convenient, right? I mean, we were waiting to get into the second prime minister's election, and then this, ground back envelope landed on my desk in patent parliament, and they say, "Okay, you are suspended for 6 months." And then that just forego, and it becomes an opportunity cost that Bertai's candidate got the prime minister.
It does put you in a long line of prime minister candidates in Thailand who were suspended for dubious reasons.
Yeah, right. From cookie shows to so it becomes any good care that he knows a lot. You're impressive for Vietnam, especially.
Well, no, I'm so interested in this, and then so you're suspended. So do you think it's your suspension that leads to the coalition falling apart? Do you think you could?
I would say they becomes an excuse. Yeah, I think it'll be an easy excuse to let the coalition fall apart because we only had one candidate. So the winning party does not have any candidate left. So it becomes a free falling.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, you can just cook something up. Yeah. Just make sure it has some flavor to it, and you just suspend to 6 months. That's all gone. 14 million votes gone down the drain. Gone down to the gutter just because of La Basic. Then I won later.
Yeah. So there's
nothing wrong with what I did.
Right. No. Right. You won the case, but also you demonstrated that there was this important movement here, right? Like that there were votes here, that this was what people wanted. You had built a coalition, right? And I guess like I want to sort of break apart this experience because I think there's the experience that you learned personally here about politics, and then I want to know more about the experience that you learned about how this made you feel about Thailand in general, the politics, the motivation, the citizens from this experience.
In Thai politics, someone would be over paranoid. I feel like that kind of fear and anxiety that obviously after winning Moch, I have to dominate ideas. So I meet with all sorts of people. I meet all the senators who despise me and let them grill me. It's like, okay, you have questions about me being an American CIA, or if you have questions whether we would like separate the southern part of Thailand and give it to Malaysia, if you're worried about demonopolization, energy sector, we're basically setting up with the tycoons, and really let them grow me in order to secure the votes and try to make sure that there's some negotiation with principle so that we can finally govern and make things happen. And I could sense that out of all those meetings, the level of over paranoia of maybe a move forward party taking Thailand to Mars, and it will be the kind of Thailand that they're not familiar with. It's not going to be the same good old days that they're familiar with. I mean, I just want it to be like Japan, where you take your family for holidays. Roads that work with some footpaths and the light and the transportation that goes beyond Bangkok. It's not a rocket science. It's just, if you have a civilian control of the military so that the military coup after 13 times, it's enough. 13 times in 100 years, we're number one, even above Honduras and Belarus and all these countries. And 20 constitutional amendments, 19 military. Come on. So it's very, very noble for countries that you like to take your kids for a vacation. And I'm not American CIA. This is my father's paying for Harvard. This is like the transfer of money, showing them that I was not funded by the CIA.
Where were these things coming from? Like these, like that you were going to give away Southern Thailand, or
the Cold War era. And the senators are about that age. Sure, they think about like Fidel Castro. Yeah, about this Cuba and things like that. Yeah. Okay, and maybe like one of my classmates was Ned Price. Ned Price was a spokesperson for the former Secretary of State, which is Blicky. Yeah, so yeah, he worked for CIA, but just because we're in the same class and we're not even close to one another, for some reason people these now they wanted to make the kind of dickage that I was funded by the American CIA to go to Harvard and things like that. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I got a proof that it's not true, and my last name is Lim LA, and it's as Chinese as it is. My grandparents from Hainan, so it has to be that I have to get it and a product of American education. I mean, like Duke and Harvard, 50% is international students, and the majority are from all parts of the world. It doesn't mean that I have to think like an American just because I went to school here.
So move forwards dissolved, and European action politics for 10 years. The they're and now I guess the government's dissolved, and then there's this agreement to hold elections in 2006. So yeah, and so I guess now you get to be you're in like the Barack Obama role in a little way, like in the sense that you get to be the popular politician
who showed up at Harrods. I'll be on to me.
Well, to reflect from the sidelines, you get to be the intellectual leader here, and I guess I'm sort of interested now. Like, first, let's take a look at the 2026 election. So, how do we read this election? Right, the Lungitai winning the election, and some people want to say this is about conservative Brazilians, but I think that would not be the answer the interpretation that he announced. What would be your interpretation?
Boy, God, I trust the rest brings data. 2026 election has the lowest voting turnout in 25 years. Since the turn of the millennium in year 2000 until 2026, this year's election, the voting turnout was 65 to 70, depending on which number you believe the election commission. Combine that with the highest none of the above votes and invalid votes. So assume that 65% of people showed up to vote as opposed to 76 during my time. That's already low. Yeah, 65 is already low for Thai case because the average is 72. Only 65 showed up, and 8% of that was vote no or invalid votes. Vote no could be organic. Like they are expressing frustration towards the system or the frustration to the political spectrum in Thailand. It could be something that you can respect, but there's like 2.5 million people showed up to vote no in this election. Invalid votes, on the other hand, could reorganize, because now I'm doing a regression analysis with invalid votes with the dynasty politics of Banyai in each area. It spikes up very much. So it could be that you're in a rural, in the middle of nowhere, in Sabonakan, for example, and it showed orange. You just say invalid, 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 invalid. So for the NARC, it's 1.8 million invalid votes this year. So that's a bit extraordinary. That's a bit suspicious too.
Right.
So, the lowest voting turnout in 25 years with the highest record of vote no and invalid votes, that becomes almost like a perfect storm of a combination for Democrats. And I think that explains the mess.
So that's really insightful. I just want to make for some people who are not Thai experts here, like that correlation between essentially oil votes and Banyai. I'm not sure everybody understands what Banyai is.
Then that's the politics. They're trying to like get last names of that particular province. Chicago South, but yeah, already back in the days. Right. Yeah. So I understand you're driving that. Yeah. Exploiting the gap of development for votes, entrenched patronage system, a lot of vote buying, a lot of the incumbent events.
And so now like we have to deal with, and it's unfortunate, right? That's the situation, because this is a government that may not have the same legitimacy as previous governments, as it deals with an incredible set of problems, the policy problems, global problems. And so I thought we could reflect a little bit on those. Like, what do you think are the major issues that are facing the current Thai government?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to continue what I thought you were going to ask.
Yeah, good.
But the byproduct of what we see in terms of low voting turnout, low enthusiasm, as well as vote no and invalid being the highest, that's order fatigue by design. Order fatigue by design. They're creating inertia by recalculating the calculus of the voters, especially rural areas, where they make sure that the cost of going to election exceeds the benefit of going to election. And that's like an autocratic playbook all around the world. I mean, I sit right here back at Harvard. Next door is a deputy house speaker of Venezuela after Maduro. And right here is a Bangladesh politician who was trying to get rid of Sheikh Hasina. So once we compared notes and we started to see the autocrats a pattern, that they are trying to make sure that there are competitive hypocrisies. There are autocrats that allows election once in a while. But if the election outcome is not satisfactory, they have to make sure that the result and the outcome doesn't have to be the same. And because of that, that's why I really felt that people like politics is too dramatized and not as sensational anymore. And that felt like they didn't have any value of sacrificing their noodle store, closing it for a day, trying to find a transportation to go to the ballots, wait for 2 hours and vote, things like that. There. So people are settling for something that is lower than the 26. And we're coming from the sideline, spending most of my time in Boston, and really looking just that example where there was a particular point in time where Obama was doing better than Harris in terms of social hearing, because he was appearing all the time and Harris just completely dropped. So I felt like I didn't want to do that to Kulatapong, and I decided to stay away and allow him to shine. Oh, right, to pull back, to pull back. So it was a designated science for me for a while, till like the last 2 weeks, and I show up and I took it personally that I couldn't drive or I couldn't mobilize people to go vote like how I did last night.
Yeah.
Because I won, not because of the campaign management or a strong candidate or weak competitor or young constituents, but voting turnout was historically high, 76%. And once it's high like that, then we crowned at the house. We crowned it all the ticks or other small things that were trying to do against us. And we do a strong correlation between voting turnout. If it's below 75%, we lose. If it's higher than 75%, no matter how weak our candidate is, no matter how strong the competitor is, we win. So it's that voting turnout number that is so important, and that's like the dominant key success factor for any election. If you have the voting turnout above 75%, we will likely win. But if it's lower than 75%, politics like first seat coming, where it's not organized, where we don't buy votes, it's very hard. And here's an example of street politics before I answer your question.
Yeah.
Our competitors are these dynastic politics. They love low voting turnout because for them, they invest less. Imagine a district here in Durham where 100,000 votes. And if the voting turnout is 70%, that means 70,000 of people go to vote, correct? And if you want to secure a majority on 70,000, you can kind of calculate that you need 36, 37, 38, whatever that is a comfortable buffer that is above 35, correct? Because 35 is half of 7. So if it's 38, that's the number of your target, and multiply that by $30 or 1,000. The amount of money you need to raise in order to buy that 38,000 votes is 38 million baht. Yeah. But if it's only 60, the half of 60 is 30. So you need kind of like 32. So, the return on investment when they calculate, ability to raise funds between 40-something million dollars per district versus 30 million baht, it becomes quite a threshold that they have to go to like scammers, or they have to go to like all the gray economy in order for them to get enough funding to secure.
That's fascinating. That so like you had to.
It's a ratio of the
They pay quota. This is why, by the way, for the students in the room, one of the interesting things about Thailand that's kind of unique is so when we look at the amount of money or like revolution of money, you actually see inflationary pressure in Thailand through that is because of the vote buying that's going on. But you were competing against this vote buying purely with organizational skill.
yes.
That's really
As they're pretty good at organizing too. You know that $30, how do you know how they pay? They give you $50 first. They don't pay the entire lump sum amount. They give you $15 or make sure you go to vote this day. They say you vote for this number. And once they see you at the polls, at the ballots, they give you $10 spots.
How do they?
You get it through you saving out of public health volunteers. What's all more.
Okay.
And then if you really win, then you can collect the remaining 5. That's how they structure the payment to make sure that you would go to vote and vote for a particular candidate because you want to collect the remaining $15 after you pay. So they're pretty smart, a lot of active.
So Indonesia, young politician dealing with this problem said, take their money and then vote for me. That was your strategy. So yeah, go ahead. I want you to not have the money, but just vote afterwards.
Yeah, but you got to find a way to see sharing. Your investment is worthwhile because that's like a couple of $1 billion.
So I do want to, like you mentioned, I just want to sort of deal with the legal issues here. What are the specific boundaries that you can and cannot participate in with the People's Party? Right?
I cannot hold a political office. Okay. I can't register to be a campaign assistant and get a minimum wage for it. So I can only appear during election season. So the next battleground will be Bangkok governor and Pattaya mayor. Is in July. That can appear. You can appear, but as like a campaign assistant. Campaign assistant. And so you rally mode. You can help them with policy issues. You can't help people. That's totally outside influence. Do influence that will get them banned again.
Oh, really? True, sir. I would have thought that would have been what you could help with, but you couldn't help on the electoral side.
Okay, I can only campaign as a civic duty. I don't have political duty. A civic duty to drive up voting turnout, organize.
Well, you're still following me. Policy questions, right? Yeah. So that's
true. Western America.
Yeah. All right.
I can't remember.
I here. I had to repeat that.
Yeah. Domestic economy.
Yeah.
If we don't build domestic economy, we're being bounced around by the great power rivalry, the tariffs that is going on, the Iran invasion after Venezuela, and the energy prices and the shipping prices and the insurance that will come with the fleet, the closure of Hormuz Strait, all those things, the Indonesians will not touch because they have the domestic economy. 300 million people with only 30% being exported. For Thailand, it's 70%. That's 70% export. Trade is on 20, so we rely a lot on globalization. And then I would argue within this year, from January through February through March, I mean, it's almost like the reverse of globalization where 45% of the energy reserves is being controlled by Washington. Yeah. And we'll only be receiving not the pros of globalization, but the cons. So, the inflationary pressure, the swing of the currency, and we have 38-day reserve of energy left as of today. So yeah, what's going on? We also, like China, we import 7% of our fossil fuels as well. So that will be something that you cannot benefit from what's going with the new world order, which is no world order, by the way. Yeah. So yeah, those are the things that we are not positioned to strategize or to capitalize. In order for you to be neutral in this kind of thing, neutrality is not a position. Neutrality is capability. And some of the ASEAN countries have that capability to be neutral. They don't have to choose between America and China because they have their own capability. But Thailand and Vietnam, for example, where we rely 120% on international trade, I'm not so sure in terms of state capacity as national governments. That is quite fearful that if you don't take care of domestic economy, you don't take care of corruption, take care of rule of law, whether it's the financial markets or real sector, we'll just suffer a lot because we're aging very fast. We're a mature economy compared to Vietnam. Average in Vietnam is 33. We are 40. Indonesia is 30 something. Philippines is 25. So we're aging and developing for the same time. We're growing at 1.6%. That's so in the Singapore.
Yeah.
That's so in the world average, and you are still developing.
And you've made this point. This has been like one of your key points when you were campaigning was the middle income trap and issues related to that. Like,
prosperity grew fairness, and so you got to mobilize
yeah.
the entire nation, not just a tough few.
So China needs to grow its domestic economy. It can't totally rely on foreign companies, right? It has to have national global champions of its own.
Thailand is.
Yeah. How about the Cuba? Where's the potential resolution? Where is this?
First of all, like I still couldn't pinpoint the reason why such a conflict happened after 14 years.
Yeah.
Out of the blue, a Cambodian soldier stepped into the zone after 14 years of peaceful demarcation and things like that. It's a byproduct of Cold War that's true, but it's conveniently happening when Thailand was rising with casinos and Cambodians was trying to get into the energy reserves within the ocean area between Thailand and things like that. So it felt like it was more family dynasty dynamics between the Shinwa tribe and Hun Sen at the time. So we couldn't really come up with the reason why such a thing happened. Maybe it could be a pivot from domestic politics and things like that. But as long as we don't know what the issue is, it's very hard to find an end game to it. But I think I would give the credit to the current former, the current foreign minister. I feel like Kutaya is doing a good job in helping out so that the ceasefire holds.
Yeah. And then a final issue now, by the way, someday when I'm going to buy you a beer, I want to hear about the phone call between you and I really want to know the inside scoop on that. But
it's just mind-boggling to me when you talk to another say that you don't have your own translator. It's mind-boggling. When I go to meet ambassadors that don't speak English, I bring my own translator.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be my business practice that when you go speak with, for example, I deal a lot with the Japanese, they will have their translator. I will have their translator always. But an important phone call like that without using the landline official line is one thing. Yeah. And the second thing is relying on the translator on their side. It's just something that is mind-boggling.
So you said you think it's proud with that anyway.
I mean, I have no idea, but a leader of a country as a prime minister, first of all, you don't use your own iPhone. There's something called Pegasus by the Israeli, who they can really tap you. Yeah. And second is that when you talk with someone who don't share the same language and the same proficiency like this, you always have a translator of your own because you want to be sure it's comprehensive and it's correct and it's concise. Yeah. That would be my take.
Okay, I love that.
Without the beer.
I do think that's a great take. My final question, and then I'll open up to the audience because I think there's a gazillion people in here who knew more about Thailand than I do. But I did want to ask you about Thailand in the wake of U.S.-China right now, because obviously Thailand's been an important partner for the U.S. in the region for a long time. One of the largest U.S. military exercises up here is Cobra Gold, which is Arctic.
This week,
yeah, it was Yatipas this week, but on the other hand, when you look at polling data from Thai citizens, Thai citizens are more likely to say that they have a positive a feeling towards China than other Southeast Asian countries, which is really fascinating. And Thailand has growing economic relations with China, so I'm really interested in how you see Thailand navigating this current global competitive.
Well, before I comment, I have to know the source. Are you referring to the ICS, the Singaporean?
I'm telling you the Asia
survey.
Yeah. So
Asian survey where Indonesia is number one, the Philippines is the least.
Yeah, the least.
It's between the American and the Chinese hegemony.
Correct. Yeah. And also, do you see the same data in the Asia Barometer survey? There's just a growth. It's not like Thailand is not the most growth of China, but it's not on the lower side. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to understand the reason behind it, the rationale behind it. Um, it was the military coup in Thailand, where a lot of engagement with the West, whether it's America or Europe, during Obama's time or during that time in Europe, where the free trade agreement and the investment was curbed during the junta's time. And that was the time President Trump came into power for the first time. So as an American alumni working with American embassies all the time, I felt, the America first, including the military coup in Thailand, it became a perfect storm that we felt the American absence in Thailand during that time, for a couple of years. But and when that happened, then Prayut's regime turned towards the Chinese for investment, for retail, for manufacturing, for tourism, lots of things. And that's the kind of foreign policy where you think about it as a buffet, not an a la carte. It's a bandwagon towards one hegemony rather than balancing it up, which is strategic balancing, which is a la carte kind of foreign policy. You stick to values. If the Chinese are doing something wrong, we work with our ASEAN partners and call them out. If the Americans are doing something wrong, we partner with our ASEAN partners and call them out. Really have our own self-determination. But because of what happened at the time, then we became, part of the Chinese narratives, a very long time. And then even when President Biden came in, he never showed up for the ASEAN summit, maybe one or two times probably. And he said maybe Harris and maybe Secretary Blinken came in and caught Copen or something and returned right. So you couldn't really blame ASEAN nations in the sense that because of that, then we sort of rely on the trade concentration with China when we wanted to have the kind of navigation of the having to choose sides and being able to diversify our portfolio and really to have choices when it comes to foreign direct investment. Because arguably, a lot of foreign direct investment that came into Thailand during that time, during that 10 years, are not very are not very of high quality. So a lot of pollution related in the EAC corridor, a lot of critical minerals factories near the border of Myanmar and Chiang Rai, Menam Kok River. And it becomes a problem with us today. But the problem is we couldn't find an alternative source of partnership. Right. So it became very hard for the ASEAN countries. And I think going forward, when right makes might is no longer the case, might makes right, starting January officially. And regime decapitation is something that's really movable. Energy coup to weaken China, if you rely on the Russian oil, Saudi oil, Iran, Iraq oil, and now you need it for data centers, you need it for manufacturing, you need it for military capability. Yeah, it's almost like a resource, almost like if Americans want critical, so see China and China needs oil for America. So it might makes right in the sense that it becomes very hard for middle power if they don't stick together. It's very hard for them to navigate, and you get asked Uyghur deportation. The Chinese wants one thing, Secretary Rubio wants it. Different thing because he was the senator who asked the Uyghur Act back when he was a senator for that. And then the Thai government has to navigate these kind of pressure all the time, and you don't have that kind of concentration to really deliver results.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a good test. All right. So why don't we open it up to the audience? Do we have another mic or do you need my mic? No. Okay. So if you have a question, just put up your hand and for calling you, we have about 20 minutes for questions. You use my mic
there. So I'll take 3 rounds of questions and I answer them in one go. And if it's repetitive and things like that.
Okay, we'll do in groups then. We'll go through. Okay, yeah.
Hi, my name is Niet. I am a sophomore student from Burma. Thank you for your welcoming you do. So you didn't talk about that during this talk, but when you're talking about three M's against one M in like concept of the universities. You talk about the monarchy as a top and the military, the monopoly, and the media against the mass, which is the people. So I can understand about the monopoly and the military, but the thing about media kind of amazed and shocked me because even in like Burma, deeply oppressed and militarized regime, there are a lot of independent media organizations which is with the people, which is reporting for truth and justice. So I'm wondering, like, if is it not a thing in Thailand? Like, why would you say that the media is against you?
Let me correct the question. The brilliance to me is monopoly, military, and media, not the monarchy. The monarchy is really about politics, so I never mentioned that. And the mass is the people, the voters. That's correct. So I'll answer a question later. But your question is specifically on media, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Second question, Tix.
So I had to break down. So over this past few weeks, there has been significant development in your personal life and post-graduation and all that. And with approximately 8 years remaining in your vehicle, then high profits may have like some transition from your episodes. And how do you envision your political future? And do you think that it will be in the future reachable to return to the political space once you occupy or a size space that you used to be in there, no longer about in the future?
We'll take one more. You kind of alluded to like how why People's Party did do as well as their previous election, that the voters are more fragmented and they're slowly focused. What lesson that the party can learn for that, and then how they should do better if so. Well, they have to be hyper local. They have to have a rural strategy. They have to have a grassroots mobilization. I think the lesson learned or the takeaway from this election that I participated in the last 2 weeks touring the country. Now I understand that mobilizing and organizing is a different thing. You could mobilize through on air and on net, on social media, but organizing is on ground and on site. And I would argue that this time we rely too much on mobilizing, and the organizing just simply disappeared. And the reason for that is because this is the toll that we have to take with the Hispanic parties all the time. When they get rid of the front runner, right, like me, then the back office people have to show up and become a front runner. Then the back office becomes patent. Like you really couldn't come up with a talent pipeline that really take care of organizing grassroots things that you really need to be on ground all the time, rather than being from the media or being in front of the voters or rally or campaigns or giving up speeches. You're going to have like that front runner, that headquarter that thinks about the strategy and political communication and things like that. But we would definitely need some grassroots organizing that is on ground 24/7, 365 for 4 years. Like you cannot campaign for only 2 months ahead of time. And I would argue that's the same thing for Democrats here in America also. I mean, if you look at early voting for Trump versus Harris, and you see the organizing, the President Trump was so good in swing states and 7 of them. Like when I look at Montgomery in Wisconsin, I know right away it had President Trump who's when it comes to organizing. And I think that's the same situation where the party really needs to think about on ground, on site, and really have a rural strategy in the way they do it, because they cannot rely on just, mobilizing people to show up and things like that. It doesn't exist anymore. So for the remaining 8 years, because I'm being asked to sit down, I cannot play anymore. I cannot be a part of the Blue Devils where I would slam dunk here. And I'm forced to be a coach. So back at corporate, I have office hours and study groups with talented ASEAN students who wanted to run for political office. So they would come to my office hour study group or my a few classes, I co-teach on how to work for public office and help them with a campaign craft. They could be from Indonesia, India, Philippines, Colombia, Japan, Singaporeans, Thailand, and then they come up, okay, let's articulate to why do you want to run for office in the first place, and what's the constituents like, what's your opinion like? If you want to be a mayor of a small town in Japan, what does that look like? What was the ask worthy turnout? So that they have a campaign that is crafted together with me. And when they graduate, they could run for public office without compromising the account of values. So that's how I'm planning to spend time. To share with a handler, being an alumni, graduated in 2011 and returned in 2024, 13 years are. I mean, it gives me a unique position to teach classes that I took and turn textbooks into reality. And now finally turning reality into textbooks for the new generation.
Full circle.
Full circle. So, they're like my cover pack. We are working with the younger generations and the care I focus on because of these younger folks that is much smarter than me and still very much relevant to politics. Media, I meant by new media in Thailand specifically, and in many very developing countries in Asia, where they still have that old established autocratic sentiment, but they're using digital platforms to control propaganda using digitization and things like that. So I'm referring to misinformation operation and disinformation operation that is happening around Thailand is done by various parties. It doesn't have, when we talk about media nowadays in election, it doesn't have to be like a old media or a newspaper or magazines or television anymore. There's some Fox equivalent in Thailand when it comes to traditional media, but I think the level of fake news is quite concerning when it comes to that that you were referring to. I'm sure it's pretty much the same in Myanmar and going through Elon Musk historic of the internet and pretty back that in Myanmar also. One point I want to make about Myanmar, when it comes to maybe the issue between China and America, as for his question, I feel like China is uniquely positioned to deliver what the Americans want and the Chinese want to deliver. There's been a lot of investment, a lot of energy, and a lot of critical minerals inside there that if you have a peaceful Myanmar that is determined by people of Myanmar themselves and return them to the table of negotiation, I think that would be very beneficial to the frontier states, which is India, China, and Thailand. Also something that the Americans always work.
Actually, if you look at Thai history, Thai has always managed these competitive rivalries of big powers extremely well. From England and France over to the Cold War.
It is the Thai policy needs to return.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can go to 3 more questions. We got one in the back. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm RPF from Thailand. I'm a PhD in genetics at Duke. I have 2 questions. I'm going to be so quick. One, you mentioned a lot about organizing grassroots movements, and I would also argue that that's really important for a lot of progressive movements in the U.S. And I kind of just like familiar with like Thai politics these days, so I don't know what you feel where like the labor union, for example, have contributed or not, or like where you're at in terms of like politics, Thailand. And second, this is a little bit more personal because I'm studying in the U.S. and I got a scholarship for Thailand and house, so I you kind of had a similar background. I don't know what kind of like stipulated or conditions you were in, but you say a lot at boxing, so you might run into a lot of the same sentiment of like, oh, we're not super excited about the prospect of going back to Thailand. So I wonder if you have the or two that you might have to say to us to make that prospect a little bit more easy for to summit. Thank you.
So we've had one hand back up here for a long time, and then we got one in the front.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Machar. I am from Bangladesh. So we had a bitter resolution kind of thing 2 years back. So I have a question specifically for your 2023 elections. I mean, when you look back to your decision to run for national elections? And was there always a looming threat of constitutional courts banning or suspending your party? And also, you also touched on what is your next plan, maybe. But I also want to know how the younger generations that voted for you, or the older generation as well, how do they trust the political institutions and in Ireland right now?
Okay, thank you. Last word, please. You get one in the front there.
Good afternoon. Gilman Invictus. I grew up in Thailand, but I spent long the time in the US now. This is very attached to learn about history. And I think Hitachi is a good job. It is like best in class communication side, using most logic, a lot of logic theories and motions. Appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about vote by the copy of vote by, and this is something that growing up in Thailand, you hear a lot about. What the part about it is that they need to has as a country to be able to resolve the issue as like it all be a lot in America.
Okay, but the first question is two parts. So one is about organizing grassroots movements and what to do about it now, both in Thailand and in America. The second was about returning a great brain problem, pretty much, in a sentence. Exactly what you mentioned. We won Samut Krabban and Rayong because of the labor movement. It's really how you think about the composition of Thai parliament, where we have the party list, which is agenda driven, and the district MPs, which is area driven. So how do you use agenda on the planet area to drive up grassroots movements? Because we are 5 votes, we don't have a common advantage. We don't have a lot of money to give it to them, whether it's a wedding or the son being banco and something like that. And what we did during Move Forward Party was that we have a couple of agendas that differentiated us from other parties. First is labor movement. Second is land rights, land justice. Third is indigenous rights. For example, let's just put these 3 examples. So I was able to manage the partyless MPs or partyless experts on land distribution or land justice, indigenous rights, as well as the labor demands and things like that. And we use that to go through very rural areas up north in Chiang Mai, Lapu, Lapan, and talk to the indigenous people, which is 10% of the population, by the way, to really tell them what's in it for them and why you should vote for us. Because we are the only party that cares about indigenous rights, and I feel like it will benefit the entire nation, where you don't have to give out your indigeneity when you can become more Thai, things like that. Same for land justice. So 1% holds 79% of the wealth in Thailand, according to Oxfam. And if you look around in 80 rural areas, they don't own any land. The land belongs to the government, 55%. Majority of the private land owns by maybe 10 families. Let's put it that way. So a lot of people in rural areas, they're thinking about getting 1,000 baht or getting a land deed, which is something that is going through the British Revolution and French Revolution, where land is an asset. Then you can collateral and get into the capital system and finally get some loans coming out of it. Because as a middle class like myself, I have land from my father, and I could use that land to go in the bank and get some overdraft in order for me to do my business, for example. But more than 80% of the people in Thailand doesn't have that kind of privilege of owning anything. There's no asset. Because of that, then it's something that you could organize and mobilize the rural population to a certain extent. I'm not sure if People's Party had that same strategy or the same approach of using the parliamentary committee, just like how you have here in the U.S., where there's land natural resources committee, and showing them that these are the steps in order for us to distribute land for you. As long as you are volunteering with us, as long as you are voting for us, we'll make it happen for you in these following steps. So that's how you could really organize rural voters without spending money on them. the the brain drain. We had this one good example from the Finnish government. Finnish government of Denmark has this overseas Danish organization. We wanted to have it right below Prime Minister's office, talent bank. We want to have overseas talent bank agency right under the Prime Minister's office where we take care of all the talents all around the world. Whether you're a fashion designer in New York or film studies in New York, whether you're a medical research in Cambridge or here in North Carolina, if you are a hedge fund in Zurich, in Switzerland, or if you are taking care of urban planning in Tokyo, we know where you are. And we don't need you to come back to Thailand and make coffee for your bosses. And we really want you to be the best in class after graduating from Columbia Film School. You have to really drive soft power from us from New York. And we really wanted, a cancer engineer research next to MIT to really, leverage President Biden's Security Act of not testing medicine in China anymore because of the federal security. You have to test American drugs somewhere, make it Thailand, and you will hit that for us staying in Cambridge, Massachusetts, not in Bangkok. You really show your audience here. So, the addition. So yeah, we have this kind of research. We can take care of you if it's a labor dispute in Finland where you work as a verifier in Finland or Sweden. We take care of you. If you're in Iran now, we'll take care of you. If you're in South Korea, we'll be able to take care of you. But at the same time, if you are experts in something all around the world, we have an agency with a sizable budget to take care of this, and we'll make sure we have that kind of strategy of how to move Thailand forward, and you are part of it. You're pretty much our ambassador. So stay where you are. You don't have to return. Just maximize your career and maximize your happiness, and really shine where you are, rather than returning to ministries or the National Economic Board for business. You probably don't want to go back. So I think that is something that will take care of the brain very properly, because we don't think of it as a brain. We think of it as our ambassador for things to have. So so BNP won, right, your election, and the guy who runs it was in exile, was like they were far already from for how many years? 20.
He actually didn't run for office any previous.
And he was living in himself.
Yeah, he was living in exile for 16 years.
Yeah, for 3 years to me, it's like, yes, not even. He's assuming they're kidnapped.
Yeah.
Because Sheikh Hasida's party is banned of running.
Yeah.
And is that going to happen after the interim government? You think they can form a coalition and really, can he really, is he almost from this, like they always say, like,
I think he is the, we had an election, so he is the prime minister.
no, that's not the case for Thailand. Cannot take it for granted in HMMS, right? But can he form a government?
Yeah, he formed it.
He formed a government already.
Yeah.
Is he sworn in inside the parliament? So Japan had the same election day as us, February. They have a house speaker, and the Sunday is the current France. The second election in Asia was Bangladesh after Sheikh Hasina flew to India. And then there's a Thai case where all the counts are not yet. Or you are 95% of the counts. So I mean, that's kind of hopeful, South Korea was another case that we felt hopeful as per President Yoon declared martial law, and then the voting turnout was 82%. The younger folks in South Korea was then the opposite in front of the parliament.
Yeah.
And they could do it. The Bangladesh could do it. The coup president in Brazil is under accountability for 27 years now. I feel like there's always hope. Politics is it's a ball. You can never know what's going to happen. I mean, not take personal with him, but President Lula in Brazil was banned by the Supreme Court for 6 years. The Supreme Court was appealed, he returned, now he's president of Brazil. Not like I'm supporting him, obviously, but I'm just telling you that the hearings do happen, but I felt like speaking to my colleagues of Bangladesh at Harvard, I felt like both Indonesia case during reformacy or South Korea case or Bangladesh case was really winning election is one thing, but dominating ideas is a second. That's one that's a collapse from within. I mean, South Korea became democratic in 1988 because there was collapse from within the army. They said, okay, no more, a lot of killing anymore of younger South Koreans anymore. Your case, I mean, like, I heard, I'm not so sure if that's true. I said, I'm not going to kill any more citizens about Bangladesh. And that like, Sheikh Hasina, after how many years? 15? After 16 years, she finally had to take a helicopter to India. So, I mean, these kind of things, autocratic snaps do happen. It's just that you've got to have the outpace, outblast. You have to outlast the bastards, period. You got to have the others and really have that kind of mindset where you're optimistic and like learning a lot until you're still vigorous, capable, able to take on tasks and challenges, and I'm still ready for it. The younger voters, I'm very concerned with what's going on in Thailand. If it's a couple of candidates that do not represent them, they're not going to vote for them. The threat of constitutional court has always been there. The threat of military coups is also on the table. So the normalization of coups, military coups, and normalization of judicial coups were always, the soft power that it didn't even have to happen, but it can swing votes. It can make sure that people don't feel like coming out to vote because they would get vandalisms. That's a kind of thinking it's pretty abnormal, but it's normalized to a certain extent that it affects judgment. So it's always there on the table. It's about dominating ideas. They're very good at dominating ideas that if you go to vote, it doesn't make you're meaningless. Your one vote is meaningless. Why show off? They'll do a military coup anyways. They'll ban the party anyways. So it's just not show off. Whereas, the South Koreans said, okay, you issued a martial law against us. I'm going to dance up until like whatever. And when it's time to vote, I'm going to show up. Normally, it's top 3 is 75%. This time last year, it was 82%. They were like, don't mess with us. So those kind of energy needs to be restored in time. Micro. It has to be tackled both macro and micro until this kind of behavioral change happens. I think macro-wise, there was a lot of vote by during my time as well with we won. It's just like I said, the denominator is like the ratio between saying and so on. That's one is big enough. Say it doesn't matter. I mean, because they're trying to minimize the SWON and maximize their own sake. And if the crowded effect of 76% of the people show up, they cannot uptake. They'll be 5 votes anyway, but it's hard enough to win. And once they see that kind of political calculation, they feel like they will withdraw, Like they're spending 10 million already and they feel like, okay, I'm not going to win this. I think like a businessman merchant right? It's like Brahmin left versus merchant right to their businessman. Yeah, so they feel like, okay, I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to stop campaigning. And you can back 8 billion, but I'm going to stop campaigning. So all the conservative votes will go to you, for example. So that's a kind of political calculation that makes it harder for them to do. My soul-wise, it's both culture and organizing. So you could do voting tabulation to make sure that the numbers are correct, which is something that needs a lot of volunteering. Second, we had a group of volunteer lawyers and former police who parked right in front of Watai, right in front of the ATOs, to make transactional laws, to create friction, for them to create friction for them to buy votes. It could be about dominating ideas, saying that if you get 1,000 now, they'll be in power for 4 years, and that's about 1,200 days, because 300 multiplied by 4 is 1,200 days. That's less than a baht per day that they buy you. I'm sure your kids' future work is worth more than kasi on Zemisa. So, and think about, a political party that cares about social welfare, the retirement fund or the retirement subsidy is 1,505 per month. So if you get 1,000 now, you might not get 1,505 per month legally. So make that kind of judgment. And I think this is something that is dominating ideas through the younger folks talking to their parents, or if you vote for these people, you get 1,000 now, and you never get it again for the next 4 years. But if you vote for these people, you get 1,500 every month, assuming that they're utilitarian. So those are the things that needs to be done, but it's a long one way. It's not easy.
So Tyra Tire showed in 2004 with 30 Baht program, and you showed in 2023. It is possible to win Thai voters with pro-Bernard policies. That you can win them away from their buying if you're giving them an idea about service movement. So, unfortunately, I could talk to you all day, and I've learned so much. This has been wonderful. Why don't you join me all in thanking Peter for
rooting for you for the next and looking forward to reading your book on democratic retrenchment. So absolutely. All right, thank you very much.